All right, Deuteronomy 27, let's call this one Rejoice Part. I'm not exactly sure, but I know we've talked about it before, so I'll fill in a part later. But let's subtitle it Spider-Man. Why? Because, well, we'll get to that later. But the bottom line is this is a passage in which he is saying, once again, as you get into the promised land, there's some things you need to do. And they're not always about obligations, even though in this chapter it's going to start out talking about, look, you're going to need to divide up between two mountains. One is Mount Ebal and the other is Mount Gerizim. On Mount Ebal, he's going to want them to set up large stone pillars on which he wants the law written clearly. In addition to that, he's going to want them to build an altar on Mount Ebal. After doing that, he's going to want them to split between Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. Roughly 6 tribes on Mount Ebal and 6 tribes on Mount Gerizim, one for blessing and the other for cursing. And he is going to begin to set up what's going to happen over the next few chapters as he talks about the consequences. Of course, we know that. But ultimately, the consequences are to get them to a place where they can simply flat out rejoice. And that's going to come up literally in this chapter where he's telling them to build the altar on Mount Ebal. The point is so that they can rejoice. Likewise, I skipped over it in the previous chapter, but in chapter 26, the reason why he was telling them to bring the first fruits is so that they could have a time of rejoicing. And so likewise, understand the reason why we call this one Spider-Man is because I typically attribute this quote to Spider-Man, but I said, let me fact check it this time. And in fact, Spider-Man movies are associated with the quote, with great privilege comes great responsibility. But it's disputed as to where it comes from because similar quotes have been attributed to great leaders throughout history, pointing back to this concept that when we saw in the last chapter that God is looking to put Israel on display, something that he's going to talk about again in Deuteronomy 28. Understand that if God is going to put you on display, he's concerned about the example that you're setting. And so it's been so difficult for me to look at my difficult times as preparation for something more, but I've gotten wise counsel from people who don't even know me, but encourage others to understand that when God is bringing you through difficult times, it is so that when he puts you in a position of responsibility, you can rejoice without regret. We have celebrities who periodically are going through very difficult times because they are regretting either things that they have said or done on a public stage and that are detracting from their ability to simply rejoice in the position they've been given, free of regret. And so if I can think back to these times and understand the process that he's taking Israel through, taking them through difficult times to get them to a place where they can rejoice without regret as he is exalting them above every nation on earth, then God willing, we can have a new perspective toward our difficult times, hopefully preparing us to whatever heights God takes us to, being able to enjoy or rejoice in those places without regret.